All right, welcome to week 12 of our live. Don't end the meeting. Sorry. Whew, I almost ended the meeting. That would have been bad. Welcome to week 12 of our live U.S. history seminars. There we go. So, for those of you live on the call with us here right now, if you have a question as we go through this, or if I ask you, a question you want to respond, A, please do. B, don't put it in the chat. Unmute yourself and respond. I I always wish I could show you my desk setup, but the chat is over. I have three monitors: my laptop monitor, my big, for those of you that took US history from me last year at CMR, I have that big iMac as one of my big kind of main monitor. And then I have a little portable 15-inch monitor that I can take with me anywhere. And that's the one I have the chat on. And it's sort of set back from the rest of my deal, and so it's very hard for me to see that. So yeah, don't. If you chime in the chat, I can almost guarantee you I won't see it until several minutes later. So please unmute yourself, ask questions as you need to. I won't be upset, I guess, barring you just shouting or something. So let's get to the announcements. So yesterday was last call for the Unit 3 test. There is no more time on that. I did update this morning for anybody that took that after about 2 o'clock yesterday. So basically everything in Power School is up to date in terms of there are zeros if you didn't take it, and there are check marks or completion marks if you did. If you have a non-zero numeric score, what that means at this moment, and that may change. I have the textbook readings done that I need to get done for this week. So I'm going to try and start grading stuff today, but I'm also trying to get a hold of parents, so it may not get graded till next week. But if you have an actual non-zero numeric score, that means you did not do the essay question, because that's the only thing that I actually have to go through and grade on any of the tests. So, by the way, that accounted for 20% of the grade. So, and the other thing I noticed, and there were only, I think, two people that in the government classes that didn't do the essay. This was more of a problem in US history than it was in government. But what I noticed is those that did not do the essay, it was not because they ran out of time. I looked, and most of the people that didn't do the essay, they finished their attempt in like 30 minutes. And you had, I think I gave you guys 90 minutes on this test because it was kind of a long bugger. So yeah, if you didn't do the essay, it was just sheer laziness, or you did not watch the live session where we talked about the topic for the essay. But I warned folks that that was going to be one of the live sessions was going to be the topic for the essay questions. So yeah. Unit 4 reading guide is due December 4th. End of the grace period for that will be December 9th. So if you haven't started that yet, get on it. Break it up for yourself. Take the amount of time you have left by the number of sections that you have to do and divide it up and do that much every day. If you wait until the day before it's due and you're trying to cram it, A, it's going to feel like you're Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill. And B, it's going to suck. It's going to be bad. Just purely because you're not going to have enough time to really think through your answers. And so that's going to hurt you moving forward. You're not going to understand what you need to understand for the test. And I do actually look at your reading guides. I will admit, I don't go through them with a fine-tooth comb. but I can tell when you've slopped it together. And yeah, so you'll probably end up losing some points if that's the case. So don't do that. You know, take your time and do it over a period of time now. If you do it a little bit every day, it's not so bad. If you wait until December 8th and try and do it in 24 hours, whew, gosh, that's a lot of work and a lot of reading. The chapter 18 and 19 audios are now in the course. I would use these really. I know the book's dry. The book, I mean, reading it as I now am, it's and why they decided to put the pull quotes of chapter 19 in that light orange font is beyond me. I get to those and it just my flow stops because I have to go because I'm old. Um, so use those audios. What I might do if it were me is have the book open in front of you and have the audio going and then follow along in the book. That way you're reading and you're getting it in your ear. That way, I mean, I won't say the audios are perfect because it's just me reading it and it's, my sort of cold reading of this. I don't do a lot of prep, but yeah, so definitely use those audios. I will get the next chapter in next week. That takes me about a day to do a chapter. I've done a chapter and a half in a day before, but I'm pretty goofy by the end, just because it's a lot of strain on my eyes. Because again, I'm old. Watch the crash course videos. The textbook, like I said, really dry. And the crash course, I will say that the host is not as good as John Green on the crash course government videos, but they're better than nothing. And it explains things in a little bit of a different way. So if the book was a little dry for you, the videos put it a different way and give you some visuals that might help you understand things better. They're not required. I'm never going to test you on the videos, but I would watch them if it were me. Make sure you're doing the seminar work. I say this every week. Week 12 CNN 10 News Quiz and Week 12 Seminar Journal. The due date and last call date for these are Monday at 8 a.m. So make sure you're doing that. If you don't get to it, during this week, hop on over the weekend and do it at that point. Don't hold out, oh, I can wait until Wednesday. Nope. Doesn't work that way. And remember that the discussion forums are scored. You do get points for those. So when you skip them, you lose points. That's hurting a number of folks. Next week, because it is Thanksgiving week, we are still going to have a seminar, but our regular seminar dates are kind of wiped out. So next week's seminar, just next week. Okay, after that we go back to normal. But next week's seminar will be Tuesday at 1 p.m. We're just going to have one. I will record that one and I will post that by about 3 o'clock that day for those that can't make it. If you can make it to that, fantastic. If you can't, it is on you, just like usual, to watch the video. Okay, any questions on the announcements? All right, let's do this. So this is going to be a fast and dirty on the federal court system. So we're not talking state courts for the most part, although we will mention them. But we're talking federal court system here, and the federal court system is more than just the Supreme Court, although that is kind of where we're starting. All right, so I took a lot of this from the one time I got to teach government in person, and it was when Justice Scalia died unexpectedly, and so I had come up with this whole Brady Bunch thing, and I had a song and everything, and it started with a picture of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and here's the story of a lovely lady, and it went through the liberal justices and then the conservative justices, and it doesn't really work now because, of course, Ginsburg's now dead, and we've added 3 new people to the court. But it's still in this grid form, so I'm sorry I didn't come up with a new song. But anyway, so current members of the Supreme Court, that is Elena Kagan. She was appointed by President Obama. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she was also appointed by President Obama. Justice Sotomayor is the first Latina or any person of Latino origin to serve on the court. This person is Stephen. Tried to say David Souter. Stephen G. Breyer. He was appointed by President Clinton. So yeah, there you go. The Chief Justice, John Roberts, was appointed by George W. Bush, President Bush II. Clarence Thomas is the longest serving member of the court. Actually was before the death of Justice Ginsburg anyway. He was appointed by President Bush I, George Herbert Walker Bush, and he is the second African American to ever serve on the court. He replaced the first African American to serve on the court, who was Thurgood Marshall. Samuel Alito was appointed by President Bush Jr., second Bush. And then here are the 3 newest justices. Justice Neil Gorsuch was appointed by President Trump. He replaced Justice Antonin Scalia. That position, Scalia died during the end of the Obama administration, and Obama had nominated a different person for this position, and the Senate refused to consider that nomination. And then Justice Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed to the court last year, I believe. He was appointed by President Trump. And then the newest justice, the hot new thing on the court, Amy Coney Barrett, who will now be the second, third, fourth, 5th woman to ever serve on the court. She is brand spanking new to the court, was just confirmed a couple of weeks ago. And she was also appointed by President Trump. So we do have a full Supreme Court, and the courts tend to be known by the name of the Chief Justice. And so this is the Roberts Court. Just imagine me singing this. The Roberts Court, do, the Roberts Court. Okay, there you go. You get a flavor. But again, the federal judiciary is more than just the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gets, 90% of the ink or the television coverage, but they're not the only place that that judicial work is being done. So you do, of course, have the Supreme Court. That's just one court. Below them are the courts of appeals. So basically, there is a middleman between the district courts, which are the federal courts that have the primary jurisdiction, and we're going to talk about that word in a minute. Basically, where federal cases typically start is the district court level. Okay, so but between them and the Supreme Court, Congress added the U.S. Courts of Appeal. There are 12 regional courts, and then there is one Court of Appeal for the Federal Circuit that is based in Washington, D.C., and they have some very specific things that they deal with. And then, of course, the district courts, 94 district courts. Now, Montana has, technically, they are one district. However, there are 1, 2, 3, 4... Billings, Great Falls, Helena, Missoula, 4 federal courthouses in Montana, but all 4 of them constitute one judicial district. But we have like 6 federal judges that sit in the state of Montana, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. So how is all of this set up? Well, it's because of Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution. So Article 3, so Article 1 is legislative, Article 2 is executive, Article 3 is judicial. And Article 3, unlike Articles 1 and 2, very, very simple and very short. Basically, Article 3 sets up that there will be a Supreme Court. Now, does not say how many members will be on that Supreme Court. It does say that there will be a Chief Justice. But beyond that, Congress makes that call. And then the rest of Article 3 basically says that Congress has the power to set up what the Supreme Court looks like and all of the inferior courts. So anything below the Supreme Court is set up by Congress. Why did the framers do that? Well, they did that so that our court system could change with the times. There was a time where we only really had district courts and the Supreme Court, and everything got shoveled up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was basically drowning in work. Now that we have the courts of appeals, now the courts of appeals are very busy, and the Supreme Court only hears maybe 80 cases a year. Now, some people would say, "Oh, they're not working hard enough," blah blah blah. But 9 people, 80 cases, and some of these cases are really giant things that you only get a case before the Supreme Court if there's some really key issue of law or some constitutional question that needs real study. That's how you get a case in front of the Supreme Court. So as much as oh, I got a traffic ticket, I'm going to appeal this to the Supreme Court. No, you're not. They're not going to, unless you were, racially profiled systematically or something. Your case is not going before the US Supreme Court. It almost never happens. So again, the federal court system, oftentimes called the Article 3 courts. So 2 types of courts here we're going to talk about there. The constitutional courts, those are the Article 3 courts. All right. So those are set up by Congress using Congress's judicial power to create the federal court system. All right. And then there are the things known as the special courts that Congress gets to set up. They don't fall under Article 3. And one of the big differences is that if you're a judge of one of the special courts, you are not appointed for life. If you are a judge of one of the constitutional courts, the Article 3 courts, your job is lifetime. Okay, you are appointed, and the only way you can be removed is impeachment. So the Senate or the House brings charges and the Senate convicts you, or you can resign, or you can retire. Okay, that's the only way you get out. And actually, if you're a retired justice, federal judge, you can be called back into service by the Chief Justice at any time. So it's kind of like the mafia. You think you're out, but they pulled me back in. So again, the constitutional courts, so you have the 94 district courts, the 12 courts of appeal, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, that's basically the 13th Court of Appeals, and then the U.S. Court of International Trade. Those are all established by the judicial power of the United States by Congress. Okay. But then the special courts, and this includes U.S. Court of Federal Claims. So if you're suing the federal government, typically in many, many cases, if you think the government owes you money, your case goes before the U.S. Court of Federal Claims. Technically, you can't sue the federal government. That's not okay. But people do it. And those cases go before the U.S. Court of Federal Claims. U.S. Tax Court, if there's an issue with your taxes, it goes before the tax court. The territorial courts, Guam, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, etc. They have a very specific court system that was set up by Congress. It is not technically part of the Article 3 system. U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. So if you are court-martialed, you're in the Navy, and you undergo a court-martial, you can appeal that case, again, if there is some sort of thing that your court martial did not do correctly, you can try and appeal that case to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. So again, even with regular appeals, again, you can't just, oh, I appeal because I lost. No, there has to be, you have to lay out, oh, the court made this mistake. They didn't consider this evidence, and that would have, totally changed the case. The judge made this decision and that was not okay, and so I want an appeal because of that. Or my lawyer was a piece of crap, right? And was drunk the entire time. That's grounds for appeal. Um, but you can't just appeal because, oh, I lost. So if you're military, and this is a civilian court, the Court of Appeals for Armed Forces is a civilian court. Courts of the District of Columbia. So again, DC has its own court system, and their Court of Appeals is the courts are a special court set up by Congress. And then U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. So you served in the Gulf War, and the government is not covering your medical treatment for this thing that you think is because of your service in the Gulf War. You could appeal that case to the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. And all of those courts, Congress sets how long the judges serve and what their purpose is and all of that. So these are not lifetime appointments. If you're a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, you serve for, it's between like 6 and 14 years is the typical term. Okay, so now we need to talk about jurisdiction, the authority of a court to hear, that is, to try and to decide a case. If you were to translate the Latin, it literally means the power to say the law. All right, so there are 3 types of jurisdiction we're going to talk about in this case. Federal jurisdiction, that is cases that are purely going to be tried in federal courts. Typically, the federal courts only hear cases that only they can hear. Most cases go to state courts. That being said, the federal judicial system hears tens of thousands of cases every year. So how would your case become a federal case? Does it involve a federal law or treaty or an application thereof? Does it involve an officer or agency of the United States government? So if you're going to try and, say, sue the president, it's automatically a federal thing. Don't even try it in state court. The state judge is going to go, yeah, no, you're out. Official representative, if you need to sue or take action against an official representative of a foreign government, that again is immediately, boom, federal. If one state, so let's say Montana is going to sue North Dakota. I don't know why we'd sue North Dakota, but let's say we're gonna, that is automatically do not pass go, do not collect $200. That is federal. One state suing another state. Or if a resident of a state is suing a resident of another state, oftentimes that, actually that's not 100% federal, but oftentimes that's federal. Or if you want to sue a foreign government, again, federal. If you are a U.S. citizen suing a citizen of another state or foreign government or a citizen thereof, automatically federal. So all of those things are federal jurisdiction. State jurisdiction, again, this is basically anything that's not federal. If you are arrested for speeding, that is state jurisdiction. If you are arrested for, I don't know, whatever, usually that's going to be state stuff. The only thing that really can't be tried in state courts, antitrust laws, bankruptcy, is almost always a federal thing. Patent, copyright, if it involves something that happens on the water, if it's maritime, then that's automatically federal. But yeah, most things go to state courts. That's just the way of it. Most of the time that you run afoul of a law, you run afoul of a state law. Um, One of the things that's oddly, even though it's something that happens typically locally, that is a federal thing, is if you rob a bank. And that's because banks are insured by a federal program called the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which, if you took U.S. history from me last year, we learned about when we talked about the New Deal. Although, given when the shutdown was, I don't know that we talked about that in class. So yeah, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Because of that, any bank that is insured by a federal program, and 99.9% of them are, so if you rob a bank, it's a federal crime. And then there are things that can be tried either in federal or state court. One of the big things with this is drug cases. So oftentimes drug cases end up as federal crimes because they involve taking drugs over state lines. But even things that don't involve taking drugs over state lines often get kicked up into federal jurisdiction. And that is actually when I went to a seminar for teachers at the federal courthouse in Missoula, and they said that like 70% of what they do is drug stuff. It involves especially meth. Meth is huge right now in the federal court system, and that's why a lot of people are doing federal time, is for meth charges. So yeah, so concurrent jurisdiction could be tried either way. Yeah, so there aren't a lot of those, but sometimes it does. Something's a federal crime, something's a state crime. Either one can try it. So let's go through some examples and see if we can identify what's federal, what's state, what's concurrent. So here is Citizen K, and Citizen K robs a bank in California. Is this federal jurisdiction, state jurisdiction, or concurrent? Anybody want to be brave? Nobody brave? Again, if you rob a bank and it is insured by a federal program, which try to find one that's not, that is a federal crime. Now, Citizen K, if she assaulted somebody in the act of that, that could also be concurrent. In so much as the assault, it could be a state charge. But the big thing would be the robbing of the bank, and that's a federal thing. Next, so Citizen M here of Michigan is going to sue Citizen HBB of Wisconsin for $80,000 as a result of damages caused as the result of a car accident. I don't think Citizen HBB is old enough to drive, is she? Federal, state, concurrent. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? Okay. This one would be concurrent. Citizen M could sue in federal court because Citizen HBB is a citizen of Wisconsin. Depending on where the accident took place, Citizen M could sue in that state's court. Likely is not this would end up going federal, but could go either way. And then finally, Citizen P of Ohio has her car repaired at Al's Repair Shop and Sushi Bar. And this repair shop is local to her. Her car breaks down on her way home. Is this federal, state, or concurrent?
I think it would be state.
Yes, it is state. There you go. So yeah, state court, purely state court. All right. So federal judges are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. The president can theoretically appoint anyone he or one day she would like to be a federal judge, but it has to pass muster with the Senate. And one of the things that sort of has up to this point limited that is that presidents, there's sort of a standing idea of senatorial courtesy, which is, so let's say the president is naming a new federal judge in the state of Montana. So the current president, President Trump, would consult with Montana's senators, and specifically the senator from his own party, which would be Steve Daines. And Daines would probably offer the president a list of names that would be acceptable to him. If the president decided to appoint somebody, from North Dakota to come be a federal judge in Montana, probably the senators from Montana would say, no, that's not okay. And by that principle of senatorial courtesy, the Senate would not consider that nomination. Okay, so yeah, the president can appoint whomever he or one day she wants, but if the senators from that state do not say, yeah, that's okay, then the nomination typically does not go anywhere. So it's the president with the advice and consent of the Senate, and again, the senators from that state, particularly the ones from his party. Now, come January 21st, let's say President Biden at that point is going to appoint a new federal judge for Montana. He would consult probably with Senator Tester, who is from his party, and Tester would give him a list of names, and President Biden would appoint one of those people. And again, if it is a federal judge, those people are appointed for life. The other type of federal judges we have in Montana are called magistrate judges, and they are appointed for, I think they're 4-year terms, and they deal with like little kind of things. They deal with like initial appearances and whatnot. So they work kind of with the Article 3 judges, but they have to get reappointed every, I think it's 4 years or something like that, 4 or 5 years. So currently in the state of Montana, we have 6 federal judges. Brian Morris is the one that sits here in Great Falls in that nice new courthouse across the river, or possibly on your side of the river if you're over there. But Brian Morris is the one here in Great Falls. He had been a justice of the state Supreme Court for a number of years before he was appointed by President Obama. He is also currently the chief judge of the Montana district. Prior to that, the guy in the center, Dana Christensen, was the chief judge of the Montana district. He serves in Missoula. He was appointed by, I believe, Obama as well. On the far right-hand side, his name is Donald Malloy. Last I checked, he is a senior status judge. So one of the cool things about being a federal judge is when it comes time and you want to slow down, you do not have to stop being a judge. You can take senior status after a certain number of years and you hear fewer cases. You're also allowed to, as a senior status judge, go to other districts and hear cases, which is kind of cool. And you don't need approval from the Chief Justice. Whereas for Dana Christensen or Brian Morris to go to North Dakota and hear a case, the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court would have to say, yeah, that's okay. With senior status judges, they don't need that. If another district needs them to come hear a case, they go and hear the case. So yeah, Malloy is a big enough deal, by the way, that the courtroom in the Missoula courthouse is named after him. That's the kind of big deal Donald Malloy is in judicial circles. To quote Anchorman, he's kind of a big deal. So yeah, I've dined with all three of the guys in the top row. They're very nice guys and very smart. Bottom row, these are the guys I've never met before. The first one down there, Susan Waters, she serves in Billings. The guy in the middle is Sam Haddon. He is the federal judge in Helena. And then Charles Lavelle is also a federal judge in Helena. He is a senior status judge. I have never met him. I actually didn't know anything about him. He's been around long enough, by the way. He was appointed by President Reagan. So yeah, he's been a federal judge for a long time. There are no constitutional qualifications, by the way, for being a federal judge, but pretty much you got to be a lawyer. I don't know that anybody's been appointed a federal judge without being a lawyer in quite a while. So yeah, it's pretty expected now that you have some kind of legal background. And typically you're a prominent attorney, or like Morris, people that served on the state Supreme Court oftentimes go on to be federal judges. Judicial districts. So some states are districts unto themselves, like Montana. We are one district. Places like New York have 4 districts. California has 4 districts. Yeah. So most cases are heard at the district level, are heard by a single judge. Occasionally, if it's about legislative or congressional apportionment, civil rights, antitrust laws, those can be heard in 3 judge panels. In Montana, that'd be pretty hard because you'd still have to have a judge come in from out of town. Even if the panel was going to sit in, say, Missoula or Helena, where there are 2 federal judges, you'd still have to have a judge from another city come in and to be that 3rd judge. So the federal district courts have jurisdiction over about 80% of federal criminal and civil cases. Oopsies. The appeals courts were set up a little bit later because there was so much stuff heading to the Supreme Court that they needed some kind of pipeline. So they set up these appeals courts. Again, there are 13 of these, 12 of them are regional, and then the 13th one is on the federal, a very specific one for federal stuff. So you can see Montana is part of the 9th Judicial District, or the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals. The 9th Circuit is the largest geographic circuit out there, and they are one of the busiest because they also deal with Hawaii and Guam and the Northern Marianas Islands. So I mean, they are exceptionally busy. Because I mean, even just California would have a ton of stuff. And there has been talk of like separating off California, Oregon, and Washington into a separate circuit, simply because there's just so much stuff that they have to do. But so far, that has not happened. Most cases are not appealed from federal district courts. Again, there has to be some sort of issue that would cause an appeal, some sort of mistake that one of the sides felt was made. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, this deals with appeals from the Court of International Trade, the Court of Federal Claims, the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, and the 94 district courts if the case involves copyright or patent issues. So those go automatically from a district court to this special Court of Appeals if there is an appealable thing. They don't go to like the 9th Circuit. That's just doesn't happen. And here's a lovely graphic that I believe is also in your textbook, just sort of showing how cases get to the Supreme Court if they're going to get to the Supreme Court. This would be nice to have as a one glance as you're looking at stuff. Okay, so that was fast and dirty. So your journal topic for this week, I want you to describe the differences between federal district courts and federal circuit courts of appeal. Okay, so just to describe, which means tell me about, don't just list things, describe. That is what goes in the week 12 seminar journal assignment in the Moodle course. Are there any questions? All right, if there are no questions, I'm going to let you be free. If you have something you want to talk to me about individually, hang out and we'll do that. All right, bye everybody.